Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me, Carlos. Really excited to chat.
Actually, funny because you are having me. You are using your own product, Descript, for this interview.
That's right. Here I am in Rooms, our podcast recorder. Yeah. Uh Looks pretty good, I think. So far so good.
Also, if there are any issues, I know who to call. Um,
You sure do. I will personally help you troubleshoot any issues, Carlos.
so you are the CEO at Descript, but you started as the VP of product, and I think that's really interesting. So you worked there for the first 2.5 years as VP of product, and then transitioned to CEO for the last 8, 9 months.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, I didn't even start as the VP of product. I started as an IC product manager, and very quickly became the VP of product. And then a couple years later, yes, became the CEO. So sort of a meteoric rise.
So I want to talk about that. Obviously, you have a product career. I saw you work at Twitter, Amazon,
Yeah.
and other companies, but it's not very common, unfortunately, to see VPs of product, CPOs really become CEOs. So what was your transition like?
I mean, I think the transition is still happening in a lot of ways, because like I can tell that my happy place is still very much in product and technology conversations. That's where I get the most excited. I do think a lot of founders are like that. So while I think it is unusual to go from being a VP of product or a CPO to a CEO, but I think someone with my DNA who is like very fascinated by the product, who loves building and works primarily for the customer. Um, that is a founder. Like that's a founder mentality. And I think that me being the CEO right now in some ways is Andrew, our original founder and CEO, wanting someone who had that founder DNA to remain in the CEO spot versus kind of getting someone who's a full kind of for hire CEO. That he felt like finding someone who had the loyalty to the founder vision to the product is what the company and the customer needed right now. So that's how I think about it.
So, a founder myself, I resonate with finding people and promoting people that have that spirit and they care and they can go that extra mile, and I can recognize that in product leaders. What do you think is the trade-off to that? Like, why do you think that there are not that many people that made that jump yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the trade-off to that is, alternatively, like, you know, Descript will go public in a few years, I hope, if all goes according to plan. And like at that point, I think there will be the question that you have whenever a founder like gets to that stage of the company, which is like, is the person who got us here going to be the person who gets us to the next step? And I think that's really what I have to prove in this chapter of my career is like, okay, yeah, you can be the CEO who's like a little bit of a maverick founder producty person. Can you be the CEO that achieves the business outcomes that the business needs to get to? And that's really where I'm learning the most right now. And I think, for 6 to 8 months in, I feel pretty proud of the progress that I've made, but that's definitely where I'm less comfortable. And so, yeah, that's the trade-off. Is like, yep, you're getting someone who like knows the hell out of the product, knows the way that the customer wants to use the product, is really understands the founder vision and can continue to carry it on and live into it. But is this going to be the person that triples the profit margin, or is this going to be the person that really unlocks, I don't know, the customer success motion? Uh, Probably not. And so like you have to make sure that there are people on the team who can supplement that. And then eventually, and I try to be very humble about this, like you need to ask like, should I be the CEO in 3 years? Now I hope I've proven myself and I can be the CEO forever. But I do think that's kind of a journey that I'll go on with the board and with the company and with the customers.
Yeah. And also, I think the definition of CEO is whatever you want to make of it, right? So you can be that person, you can create that space. And I went through some of those transitions myself as the company evolved. Started like this company is 12 years old. I started two companies before. So, like, and ultimately, I think you have that freedom, right? To define what you want and then who you want around you. In fact, just to close the circle on that, now that you stepped up as CEO, you had to hire kind of your successor as VP of product. How is that for you?
That's the easiest part. I think like finding things that I'm really good at are finding exceptional product talent, and hiring, like making a good pitch to hire, and then putting those people in positions where they can be successful. I think like that's what when I was promoted to the VP of product role at Descript, that was the task in front of me. There was one other PM at the time, and it was like, okay, Laura, you be the VP of product. Can you build a team? And I very quickly was able to hire some incredible talent, get them set up for success in a way that the product team, it had been hard to onboard product managers before I was the VP of product. And I think I was able to make every single person on my team of that initial hire set is successful, was successfully ramped up, which was kind of unthinkable at the time. There were a lot of speed bumps for new PMs. And so hiring a good VP of product is just an extension of that, right? It's like the combination of giving this person enough context and spending enough time with them that that they can really learn what you think the strategy ought to be, but then giving them enough freedom to experience that in the way that works for them. And I think that I was actually uniquely positioned to do that super well. Um, both because I had built this really successful product team at Descript and because I had lived in that interesting, like being a VP of product at a founder led company. What is like, I'd been on the other side of that kind of like tension that can sometimes arise. And I think like develop, have a lot of empathy for people on both sides of the table. And so I think that's been an area where that's felt actually pretty easy for me in my role.
One of the themes I want to explore with you is communications. I mean, we know that one of the most popular use cases for AI is improved communications, and especially with your product. We're going beyond the classic, well, help me improve the copy of this email, right? So there's a lot of video and audio uh, aspects to that. So maybe start with what does the script do today, and then we can dive deeper into how PMs can improve their communication.
Yeah. Descript puts video in every person's toolkit, and it does it by letting you create video as easily as you create and edit documents. And so our like in 2018 when we first brought Descript to market, the way that we created and edited documents was, in Microsoft Word or in Google Docs. And so the way that you edit video in Descript is you can edit the transcript and it edits the video. So you and your whole team can be in there just like you're in a Google Doc. You can delete, you can copy and paste, you can add new words, you can correct words, and it'll just look like that's what you originally recorded, right? That's the promise of Descript. Of course, the way that we create and edit documents is changing. And now, just as often, we're using agentic workflows or we're using LLMs to create and edit our written communication. And in just that same way, Descript lets you use the power of LLMs, use the power of agentic workflows to edit your video as easily as you edit docs in this new world, where the way that you edit docs is a little bit different.
And for product teams specifically, in general, specifically, we don't live in video, right? Like, of course, we might need to create a onboarding tutorial or maybe record ourselves to explain a bug on the website. But like for some of those specific websites, use cases, basically when for people who don't have a podcast, how can
Yeah,
PMs leverage the power of AI to really improve that communication with their team and customers?
there are two use cases that I see every PM who uses Descript using Descript for. The first is the good old product teardown, and that is like the screen share, right? So Descript, I think, is better than almost any other solution for recording your screen. You're in that little circle. We now have smart zooms and pans, so we'll like zoom in on whatever you're clicking on automatically. You can edit it so that you're less rambly, right? Because I don't know about you, but when I load up the old screen recorder and I'm walking through an area of friction in the product, or I'm walking through another product that I have envy about and I'm kind of explaining what I like about it, I'm not exactly being succinct. And then I'm like, oh my God, no one's going to watch this 14-minute video where like I get distracted halfway through. And I use Descript to turn that into a 2-minute video. And it's very, very useful. So I'd say like screen recordings, whether I'm using them internally or externally to demo a product, whether my product or another product, that's a really common use case for PMs where I think video is so much easier. Uh, and then the other one is we use it for design review. So like product and design, especially now that like product managers aren't just writing docs, like so much of our product review is now like, let me show you this prototype that I made or whatever. I think that accompanying your Figmas or your prototype with a quick video that gets to the gist and kind of shows the magic is a much easier workflow. So those are the two that I really like it for. I think like launch videos is another one. And then, of course, something that, I mean, I always make a pitch for people that are able to do it is the way that you are going to get your next job is more than likely going to be through your network. And you can dramatically increase your network by posting videos on LinkedIn. Um, so I do think that that is less of like a product manager job, but more of like a person in tech who's always thinking about the job after the job. You should start thinking about your content lane. And I think in the future, everyone's going to be kind of an influencer of something or another. And so I accept it deep into your soul and start making those vids, people.
I mean, I'm with you. I'm not always succinct and with my communications, and I think sometimes the privilege of being in a leadership position can backfire, right? Because nobody should be listening to a 5 minute rant just because the boss is sending it to you. So I think one of the challenges with using a new format beyond copy is the adoption of it. Like, okay, we're also used to the classic sending a message on Slack or editing a doc on Google, whatever. Like, how do you help people get to that aha moment fast enough to the point that they start wanting to give it another try?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think historically at Descript, if you're motivated to make video, it's been we've gotten better and better every single quarter for people that are motivated to make video at making them successful. And we look at that by saying like how many people are able to export a video on their first day of using Descript. And over the last 18 months, we've more than doubled that number so that now I think like one in every four, one in every five people who use Descript are able to export on the same day a video and use it. And I think we have ambitions
What do
to
you
get
mean
that
by
up even.
export? Laura, what do you
I
mean by
mean,
export?
so either publish it to a share page that Descript provides, and we'll tell you how many people have seen it, or export it to an MP4 file or something so that we know like this was good enough for you that you decided it was done and that it was time to take it to its next location, whether that's sharing it on Slack or sharing it, via share link, whatever. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, yeah, totally. I have to confess, I have ADHD. So to me, using visual and audio communication is key. Like sometimes I
Yeah.
just can't pull myself to read long documents. So I've been
Yeah.
experimenting with different tools. I mean, one of them is like Whisperflow. It's just so powerful that I can speak instead of type, and that the tool automatically fixes grammar, removes some of the um,
Yeah.
formats things for me and whatnot. So with video, it's even more powerful. And so I'm curious to know like what are some of those ways that AI can help polish the communication without having to manually edit.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that we have that I love is edit for clarity. So that's where I can push a single button and it will go through my long rambling script and get it down to just the main points. And then what's really great about Descript is you can then, that might seem kind of jumpy, but you can then smooth out all of those edits. You can actually add a couple of connector words to make it sound more polished in your voice and make your lips say those things. So it kind of looks like you actually recorded it pretty succinctly to start. It doesn't look like you spent 60 minutes getting to the TikTok jump cut of like, oh, this person, or, like in a reality television show when they've so doctored the original thing that you said, that it just like, the voice just keeps jumping over and over. We'll smooth that all out for you so that it looks like that's what you originally recorded. And then the other thing that you can do is you can actually work with our agent Underlord to give it a certain time. Like, hey, this is a 90-minute meeting. Can you cut this down to 3 minutes of the most important stuff that happened in this meeting and show me that so I can see it? Yeah, so it could do that with customer calls too. Like, here's like 30 hours of customer calls. Can you just turn this into a highlight reel of the most important stuff that came up about competition? And you can like listen to those and sort of understand it. And now with our new API, you can actually do that all within Claude. So if you're already Claude pilled and you've gotten all your connectors set up, you can just get your Descript connector set up and move data into Descript and create videos without ever having to like look at something that appears to be a video editor.
Want to talk about that? AI avatars, AI voices. Sometimes, people just want to use their own face or like just find it easier to maybe feed a script and have the video be auto-generated. Tell me more about like how can that be used in a positive way and not for people to be like, that's fake.
Yeah, so I'm less worried. So I think there's sort of two concerns with AI avatars, and maybe three. One of them is like, what about deep fakes? And I think everyone can agree that like deep fakes are super unethical. I think we're going to need regulation that appropriately um, incentivizes tech companies to address this. Right now, the kind of thing that you would need to do to prevent deep fakes is like pretty costly, and so like I think if we're gonna get that stuff going, we really need some regulation around it. Now, Descript has done more than I think anyone else uh, for our like custom voice workflows. We have put many more safeguards in place than other players on trying to prevent deep fakes, but there are still ways that you can get around it. And so that does concern me. And I think like what would be really helpful is to see more regulation there. Then I think like, okay, so that's deep fakes. Then there's like the other things that I think are worrying about avatars. And one of those is like slop. Uh we hear a lot about slop. I don't think about slop as being uniquely AI, but I think about slop as a form of content arbitrage, where when the cost of creating content is low enough, then people who like to make money off of content, even if they're making only a very small amount of money off of it, because the cost to create it is so low, they will flood the zone with like really low quality content that is super cheap for them to make because any return is going to be like a pretty good return on investment. And here, I think that's a big problem for me with AI creation, and we can talk about that if that's interesting to you. Then I think there are authentic reasons to use AI avatars. And there are, then I think there's just bad taste. So people that aren't trying to create slop, but they've just chosen an AI avatar and it was like not the right moment to choose an AI avatar. So like AI avatars where you are trying to create an authentic relationship uh, between the kind of creator and the audience. Like authenticity is so important to the podcasting experience, to the creator experience, that I think it would be a mistake to use an AI avatar for a lot of creator use cases, for a lot of marketer use cases, for a lot of use cases that are about building relationships and being aspirational because they just feel very transactional. And I think it's like especially a mistake to do it without somehow disclosing that it's an avatar. And I think they're like by disclosing, I don't mean like warning, this is an avatar, but it's like be fun with it, make it animated, make it obviously not human, make it like a bit uncanny and glowy so that we're all aware, like, oh, this is like a character you're creating, like the Geico lizard. Like, no one's upset the Geico lizard or iguana or whatever isn't a real iguana. No one's like, you liars, right? But right, it's not pretending to be a real person that's like trying to form a relationship with you. So I think it's about just creating the right contract between like I am a creator, I'm a marketer, I'm a media person, this is the contract I have with my audience. I need to choose the communication channel that is going to reach that audience and not feel manipulative to them and not feel like, kind of gross. And so like when I see AI avatars like as customer service bots that are obviously customer service bots that are explaining a very transactional task, I'm like, yeah, that feels reasonable. When I see an AI avatar like explaining my expense policy, I'm like, okay, I didn't need this, but that seems reasonable. When I see an AI avatar like talking to me about end of life care, I'm like, get the hell off my screen. I don't want to, you don't know about end of life care AI avatar. Like, I would like to speak to a human, please, or at least listen to a human who's had this experience. Like, I don't want to just hear fake content about this, you know?
Totally. And at the same time, I think they are getting the technology is getting so much better, right? Like obviously there's still situations you can feel that they could come across as robotic, but the same way the first time I had 11 labs or similar or notebook LM to read a PDF for me, I was like, I can't take it. And I'm like, that's totally cool, and I can even choose different voices. I can totally see myself enabling the option of, hey, not just read me the article, like can you just have some sort of visual interaction, either because you are generating the slides or because at least I see an avatar that is explaining this, yes, so I can engage more.
Yeah. I think that AI avatars can be really helpful. Like what I'm, so what you're saying is like, does quality change the equation? And I think I don't think so, right? Like it doesn't change the equation of what I talked about. I think it makes the use cases that I pointed out feel better, like training videos feel better. And I think they're only going to keep feeling better with AI voices and stuff. But I think sensitive and authentic topics, like it's not about how good it is. It's about like the fact that I don't want to talk to AI about this sensitive subject, or like I don't want you to pretend to be a human when you're not, which I don't think Notebook LM is trying to do. Notebook LM is
Yeah,
like,
of course.
give me a whole bunch of crazy context and I'm just going to create a summary for you in spoken form. And I'm like, that's great. That passes the like yucky test. Do
Oh
you know
yeah,
what I
yeah, of
mean?
course. Totally. No,
It's when an
I think,
avatar is trying to sell me a handbag. Like, it's like, I love this handbag. My name's
yeah,
Natasha
yeah.
and I live in Ohio. And it's like, no, it's not. You're a fake person. Don't try to sell me a handbag. If you do, don't pretend to be like a real Natasha from Ohio. Create a character for me. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, of course. And I think those, I completely agree with you. I think my point is when I am as the user and choosing to see an avatar or to have AI read something for me versus just being misled into an experience that I didn't choose.
Yes, I think in general, like AI trying to form human relationships with people in any way, whether it's to sell you something or to do therapy or to be your friend after school, all of that gets a big yellow to red flag for me. All of that technology feels ethically dubious, and is really something that as a society, I think we need to deeply introspect around. And it's like the kind of thing where I'm like, I would never let my child get close to this ever. And so whenever you have that, like being a parent is so useful because it just creates this very useful heuristic for you, where you're just like, well, do I want my child to like form a deep like friendship with an AI character online? No, that sounds incredibly crippling to their emotional development. Like, no. You know what I mean?
Totally. Absolutely. I'm a parent too. So I empathize with that. And my kids are already starting to use AI, obviously more foundational ways, but yeah, have to keep a close eye on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they should. Like, I mean, I'm really excited for my kid to use AI. We use it to build all the time. I think like getting kids to use AI to build is so smart. Like it's like a great use of their time. So like when I told my child that we could use AI to build like he's really into Titanic, to build like a Titanic based role playing game, he was just like, we can build that. I could build that. Or like we're gonna build like a Pokemon card collection app that he can actually have on his phone to track the Pokemon cards that he has. And he's like, I built this. This is amazing. So like that, I think Kids Plus AI where they're building things is like really awesome. I think Kids Plus AI where they're like interacting with AI like it is a person is deeply harmful. And like overall, my thesis statement is like AI is not people. Uh, do not create things that try to trick people into thinking that it is people. It's dangerous.
Yeah. So funny to your last point about you building your kids building Pokemon. We actually built a similar one with Replit, and today I got a charge, and my reaction was like, you know what? I'm happy to pay for this vibe coding tool much better, much more than other things because it's so creative and it's funny to see how they run out of credits, so quickly.
Right. I think that goes to like when I think about kids and technology, it's like, are they using technology to consume or are they using technology to create? And I think about that with society in general. Like, I'm much more excited about technological advances that make it easier to create versus technological advances that like make it easier to passively consume more and more. And so I really like working at Descript. I think it turns a lot of people into creatives that might have previously been like, I'm really not a creative person. Like, I'm not a video editor. Maybe I have a story to tell, but like, I don't know how to tell it. And so, like, what's exciting about Descript is if you have a story to tell, we can help you tell it. And that's kind of the promise that we want to make to people. Now, some of the people who have stories to tell, it's stories about the companies that they work at and the products that they sell. Those are stories too. Some of them are podcasters. Some of them are media companies. But at the heart, every single customer of Descript has like a story they want to tell or create. And we try to make it easy to do that.
I want to connect that to my next point, which is now that the barriers of entry are lower, it's easier than ever to communicate via audio, video. You don't have to over rotate on editing perfectly polished things. AI can help you get there. Sometimes I think there's a risk with just pushing that button and saying, okay, now I can export more videos than before. Hence, I am done. Check. Classic all hands meeting with the CEO will download the message and feel really good about, well, I just communicated the vision. So I'm curious to learn more about metrics around ensuring that the message lands right and that there is like acceptance by the other side. It's not just about pushing more messages faster.
Yeah. So this is sort of like, how do you make sure? So Descript's mission statement right now is to create things that otherwise wouldn't exist and probably should. I really love that mission statement because it includes both parts of I think what you're talking about. We want to help people create things that otherwise wouldn't exist, right? Like without us, you wouldn't be able to tell your story. And then there's like this appropriately um, hedging a bit second statement of and probably should, right? And it's the and probably should that keeps us, I think, squarely out of AI slop, where you're just like, look, we don't think this should exist. And so Descript is not going to try to optimize toward that. We're going to make sure that human review is an important part of the step that we encourage because we think that's how you get to quality. Um, I think that like the reason it says probably and not just and should exist is because like after a certain point, who's really to decide if content should exist or not? Like I think one of when we first launched Underlord, for folks that have agreed to share their prompts with us, which for Alpha was a requirement. It's like we get to look at the prompts. And so I had a lot of fun looking through the prompts because I saw the diversity of content people were making with the script. The very first customer who made content with the script was making videos uh, that were all about like I don't want to say conspiracies, but kind of conspiracies about Taylor Swift and and like what her songs were about, right? So just like these long videos about like what the secret hidden messages in Taylor Swift's music are. Now, should that content exist? I- I'm a fan, so I think it should. But like, what societal good is that content doing for anyone? I don't know. So I think like past a certain extent, I try to not have a lot of feelings about what people are making. I feel like your question, yeah. So that's what I'd say is like in the creative world, it's hard to determine if like a piece of content is like should exist or not. Uh, yeah.
To me, a way I'm thinking about internal daily communications, right? Like as we now
Mm.
have more tools and it's easier to
Got it.
send videos to others, there is a risk of people spending too much time watching other people's videos, right? So sometimes I'm just trying to think about the balance between just sending more messages and measuring that as a success with also ensuring that the messages are landing and people can act on them.
I don't like to me. So I understand your question, but like for me, I haven't seen this yet happen with video and video communication. I feel like video communication, especially if someone's willing to get up in front of a camera, is still like 10,000 times higher signal than written communication because the cost is still higher than written communication. And so in the workplace, if we're talking about like work slop, where we're seeing a lot of additional things are being produced, but not of equal value, I don't as much see that in video, even at a company at Descript. Where I see it is in documentation. And so, like, it used to be that if a PM sent me a document or an engineer sent me a document, I'm like, wow, this person sat down and they wrote a document. And this deserves my time because someone took the time to write this. And even if I disagreed, I was like, this was very high signal for me to engage in this thing that someone crafted. Now, that is not the case, right? Like you get sent things sometimes and you're just like, I'm sorry, did you even read this? Or did you just generate it and slap your name on it and send it to me? And so when this started happening last summer, I sort of went on a tear and was like, wrote a document myself with my own two little hands called like like human collaboration in the age of AI. And I set out some norms that I wanted us to agree to as a company for how we were going to create and share documents. And one of the points that I made in that document is that in writing, there are two acts hidden up in that act of writing. The obvious one is expressing your thoughts. The less obvious one is thinking your thoughts, right? I think it is kind of tacky to just delegate your writing to AI and share it with an external audience. But there's nothing wrong with being tacky at work. Be as tacky as you want. I think there is something irresponsible about delegating your thinking, your critical thinking to AI. Even if you believe that AI has PhD level intelligence and is smarter than you are, you still don't delegate. You work with it, but you start with your thoughts. And so this is where, you talked about Whisper Flow earlier. This is where I use Whisper Flow. So the way that I make a document now, let's say that I want to get everyone working on this project. I'm about to use my toxic CEO card and say, like, I don't care about your roadmaps. I need you to work on this project. How would I go about like creating the document that explains that? Well, I start by dictating into one of these dictation apps. You and I both like Whisper Flow. There's a bunch of other ones. And I just say the thing that I would say in a meeting, which is, as we've talked about, and as your listeners are now well aware, likely quite rambly. So I just spend like 20 minutes shouting at my computer, like, this is why we need to do this. Then I bring that into Claude and I'm like, okay, um, help me make this more succinct and a little bit clearer, like clean up the outline, maintain my linguistic idiosyncrasies, the things that are idiosyncratic about the way that I talk. So like a funny simile or metaphor, like the human choices, the millions of human choices that I have made in that 20-minute screed, um, subconsciously, because I'm a pretty good communicator and like I know kind of how I want to tell the story, but just make it a lot better, right? And so it'll do that and turn it into something much more succinct. And then I'll look through it and I'll turn on my dictation tool again and I'll like I'll do another pass and be like, yeah, when I said this, like here's some additional context I'd add. And that's kind of how I work with it. And I'm like, add all that context until I get to the thing where I'm like, yes, this represents what I think. And then I might be like, what do you think? What did I miss? How can I make this better? But kind of like collaborating with AI in that way to get to the highest level of my own mental aptitude versus just being like, I don't know, Claude, what do you think we should do to increase our conversion? Just come up with it yourself. Like that's just take it or leave it. But that's my personal perspective, and I would encourage others to try that out.
Last time we spoke, you said something that stuck with me. You said, if you are a good writer, you are a good thinker.
Mm, mm. I think that's true. I've yet to find a good writer who's not a good thinker. And it used to be, I mean, this is why I think like it used to be that writing is how you would clarify your thoughts. And now I worry that we are delegating that process. And so we never actually get to clear thoughts. Now, why does that matter? Because clear thoughts are then how you create the decision making criteria that make all of the type 2 and type 3 decisions easier. So like that's what the act of writing a PRD, that's just like the act of writing the PRD, that's the stupidest part of it. But like working through all of the things that go into that PRD not only clarifies the PRD, but then when the designer is like, hey, so, should we reveal the UI for this before or after they hit the submit button? You actually already know because in the process of making that PRD, even if you missed that requirement, you created in your head all of the design and decision criteria to make good type 2 and type 3 decisions. And if you delegate that, you kind of like you don't know. You're like, oh yeah, let me think of I don't know, let me ask Claude that too. And so that's why I think like it's really important to start with a kernel of kind of your own creative processing.
Laura, for a company that is so much into creating good video communications internally and externally, curious to know how you fit live communications, like where it
Mm,
makes sense for you to have that real time connection versus using more async tools for that.
yeah, that's a good question. I like and it so depends on person to some extent, but I think that for me, live communication is still such a critical part of how to get good work done, especially creative work, because a lot of creative work, and that doesn't have to mean that you're in the same room, but there's something about I call it tossing the ball around. um, my team makes fun of me. That's a Lauraism. Is like I'm constantly talking about tossing the ball around. When you're in that creative stage where you don't quite know what it is you want to make yet, I think AI wants you to be done really quickly and like get you to decision points and be like, oh, like you don't know what you want to do? How about this? Does this sound good? Let me know if you want me to add more details. Like it's always pushing you to the next step. And I think like there's really this important moment that happens in a lot of creation where like you don't quite know what you want to do. And so you're tossing the ball around with each other. And it's a really it can feel like a low signal waste of time without the right people in the room. You have a great team when like your team is exactly the people that you want to toss the ball around with on the hardest decisions that you're making as a leader. And you're just like, great, I'm going to pull the 4 people that I trust most into the room. And that's how we're going to get to the highest signal thing the fastest. But what I'll say, Carlos, is like, a lot of teams that ain't it. And I think like AI is really helpful and like async is really helpful for people who feel like they don't at their beck and call have 4 really awesome people to toss the ball around with.
But it's been great to have you on your own product to discuss communications. This is a topic I don't think I've explored enough with other guests because sometimes it sounds like too wishy washy. And I think spending the time to break it down and hear from you, like when you to use what type of channel and how you actually do it, it's hopefully very actionable for other PMs because ultimately this is the tool that we use on a daily basis, we like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really glad to use a tool that I love and to use a form of communication that I think is only going to continue to grow and become more influential. And that is like the conversational content, just getting interesting people together, talking about things and putting that out into the world is, I think, I'm long on podcasting.